Okay, so now we know about what language is and what language is not, but how much do we know about how language actually works? Okay, so like we said, language is highly structured. How we use our language is important. How we connect words to create meaning is important. If I mix up the syntax or the order of my words, it doesn't really make a ton of sense. Okay, so when we're talking about how it actually works, it's important to know the structure of language. And because all languages are equally valid, they all are complex and highly structured. Even languages that are unwritten, so only spoken languages, or languages that are maybe spoken by only a few people. It's part of the definition of a language is that it's highly structured. So even if it's not a very common language or is only spoken, or is only signed, it is still highly structured and quite complex. Okay, so but what's interesting is that most people have little understanding of the formal structure of their language, but have more of an intuitive sense of how we say words, the order they go in, and the rules for doing those things. So this is kind of like a norm in a society where we don't really think about it too much until it's broken. Until someone says something incorrectly, do you not really think about the syntax, the pronunciation, or the grammar? And if you probably just noticed, I messed up that sentence. So it's something we don't really think about. We kind of have this intuitive understanding of the correct way that each of these aspects of language should function. And so we do notice the mistakes, we just don't think about them a lot. Okay, so lang is the formal rule of a language, where parole is how it's actually spoken. Okay, so there's a difference here between the actual rules of the language, or the formal nature of the language, and then how we actually use our language. And so anthropologists can actually study these two different types of language. The first will be descriptive linguistics, and so this is studying how the language sounds and its grammar. Okay, so this is not how we use our language. This is the actual way the language should be used. Okay, and so we can break this down into 3 levels. So phenology, which is the systematic pattern of speech sounds. Morphology, which is how the words are formed into meaningful units. And then syntax, how we put all the words together to make sentences or complex utterances such as paragraphs. Okay, so all languages are structured, and that means they're also predictable. So you can predict each of these different categories and each of these different structures. Okay, but do remember that descriptive linguistics is studying how a language's sound system and grammar should actually be used, as opposed to how we tend to use them. Okay, so when we're talking about the structure of a language, right, we have the sounds of the language. So an intricate combination of moving parts is necessary. And so, right, we talked about non-human primates can't make these sounds. And so all of these pieces work together to make the actual sound. And this is important because this is a limiting factor to other species. And it shows the biological component of language, that without these adaptations physically, we wouldn't be able to have this complex system of communication. So phenology, remember that's, if we go back, one of the aspects here of descriptive linguistics is phenology. So these are the systematic sounds of a language. And so we have a few different pieces in here. We have a phoneme, which is the basic sound. So a p, p or b sound. These are phonemes. These are the smallest unit of sound within a language. Okay, and so language starts there and builds up. Okay, and then we can find these sounds by studying minimal pairs. And so a minimal pair is just a pair of words that's different only by a single sound. So pat and bat are minimal pairs, and we can see the significance there in the p sound versus the b sound, because that's all that's changed. We have pat and bat, which mean 2 different things. Okay, And so that's how we can kind of find these phonemes, is by finding these minimal pairs where the only difference is one sound. And so that sound must be significant because it changes the meaning of the word. Okay? And so we use these same ideas to classify every single sound in a language. There are some languages that don't use sounds the same way. So a click, like is a very stereotypical example, but some Southern African languages use the click, and we can categorize that the same as the p or b sound.